Parler. Let's talk about Parler, the last great haven of free speech here on the internet, a safe space for those with unpopular political opinions and speech that might otherwise make them a target for others in positions of power. Thank God we all have Parler. There's nothing that can go wrong. There's no way it'll ever turn into a shit show of spectacular level, until it does, and yeah, it did, and it was grander than spectacular. Just like the fall of cyberpunk, all that trust, goodwill, and hard work built up over time was destroyed in less than a week. In the fallout of the Capitol riot here in the US, Twitter and other big tech companies started cracking down on both Donald Trump and QAnon conspiracy theorists. Donald Trump himself was banned off of Twitter, and so were thousands of his more extreme supporters. This obviously pissed a lot of these people off who are already disenfranchised with how big tech and social media companies handle free speech. So obviously many of them were looking for an alternative, and lo and behold for them, they found it in an app called Parler, a competitor to Twitter that not only allowed far-right opinions, but actively encouraged it. However, the bad news was that these people could not see into the future and were not prepared for what was to come. After the mass exodus to Parler, the app now had a target on its back. Apple took them off the App Store, and people were telling on them that Jeff Bezos and anybody else who was integral for their services to function properly, including the people who are responsible for their two-factor authorization. Do you know what two-factor authorization is? It's a very basic necessity for cybersecurity and warding off cyber attacks. Oops, they lost their partner who was responsible for two-factor authorization. I'm sure this is going to end well. What followed this was a massive organized cyber attack on Parler, where hackers were not only able to get into user accounts, but they were able to create and duplicate admin accounts. What does this mean? Well, it means the hackers had the tools and the means to collect every piece of information they could possibly hope for, even the images of verified users' driver licenses and identification cards, because Parler required them in order for users to be verified in the first place. The hackers had their hands on everything. When all was said and done, they collected 70 terabytes of user data in order to plan and orchestrate a mass dox and data leak. This is pretty serious stuff. If you made an account on Parler just for shits and giggles, you're possibly at risk of having your information leaked because of this attack. Now, as much as I want to say that the story does not in fact end there, it does, because Parler was forced to shut down following the cyber attack for unrelated reasons. There is one additional piece of information that does bear mentioning, though. Remember the Capitol riot? Well, as you would guess, many of the people who went to that riot moved to Parler to brag about their involvement with history in the making. It was a far-right friendly platform. Parler had their backs, and it was a safe space for them to say whatever they want. Everyone else had stabbed them in the back this week, but not Parler. Parler would never turn their backs on them. Until they did, because it turns out Parler was collaborating with ya boys at the FBI and has been snitching on its users who they suspect were involved at the riot or those who are inciting future unrest. So why am I making a video talking about the downfall of Parler? Well, because we're seeing just how wrong things can go for the users of some of these alt-tech platforms and how easily everything can fall apart. It took less than a week for the CEO to lose everything, for the hackers to take over the website and collect everybody's information, for it to be shut down probably permanently. And as we're speaking, there's talks of people trying to make startups that are essentially clones of what Parler was, and unfortunately, I think what we saw happen to Parler is just the beginning of the end for a lot of these tech companies that we already know and trust.